Tonight, we return to the gentle world of Hill Valley, where time flows like a quiet river, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, but always carrying us toward adventure. Our story continues exactly where the first film ended, with Doc Brown appearing in his gleaming DeLorean time machine, ready to take Marty McFly on another journey through time. But before we drift into tonight's sleep story, my name's Murphy. If these stories help you relax, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you'd like, share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always beautiful to see people winding down together across the world under the same night sky. Now let's dim the lights and let the story roll. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across Lyon Estates in Hill Valley, 1985. Marty McFly has just returned from his incredible adventure in 1955, where he helped his parents fall in love and ensured his own existence. He's standing with his girlfriend, Jennifer Parker, outside his house, both of them still processing everything that has happened. Suddenly, the familiar whirring sound fills the air. The DeLorean time machine appears around the corner, its metallic surface gleaming in the sunlight. Doc Brown steps out, his wild silver hair even more disheveled than usual, his brown eyes bright with urgency. But this isn't quite the same Doc that Marty left behind. This Doc has been living in the future, and he's seen things that worry him deeply. Doc moves with quick, purposeful steps toward Marty and Jennifer. His lab coat flutters behind him as he approaches, and there's something different about his manner. More serious, more concerned than the enthusiastic scientist Marty knows so well. Doc has always been excitable, but now there's a weight to his movements, as if he's carrying important news. He tells them that they need to come with him to the future. Something terrible happens to their children, he explains, and only they can prevent it. The way Doc speaks is urgent, but not frightening. More like a concerned parent, explaining why they need to handle something important right away. Jennifer looks confused and asks what could possibly happen to children they don't even have yet. Doc's explanation is gentle but firm. Time, he tells them, is like a river with many tributaries. What happens in one part of the river affects everything downstream. Their future family needs help, and they're the only ones who can provide it. Doc begins preparing the DeLorean for another trip through time. He moves around the car with practiced efficiency, checking gauges and adjusting controls. The afternoon air is still and warm around them as he works. There's something peaceful about watching Doc in his element, tending to his magnificent machine like a gardener caring for a prized plant. He explains that they'll be traveling to October 21st, 2015, 30 years into the future. The way he describes it makes it sound like they're planning a simple road trip to the next town over. Doc has always had this gift for making the impossible seem routine and manageable. Jennifer asks practical questions about what to wear and what to expect. Doc assures her that everything will be fine, that they'll only be gone for about 30 minutes. His confidence is reassuring, like a pilot explaining a smooth flight to nervous passengers. There's something comforting about the way he handles their concerns with such gentle authority. Marty feels a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. After everything he's experienced, time travel still feels surreal, but Doc's calm presence makes it seem as natural as taking a drive to the grocery store. The DeLorean sits there humming softly, its fusion reactor creating a gentle, almost musical sound. As they prepare to leave, Doc makes an adjustment to the DeLorean that Marty hasn't seen before. He flips a switch, and suddenly the car begins to rise off the ground. The wheels fold up into the undercarriage, and the entire vehicle hovers about 3 feet above the pavement. Jennifer gasps in amazement, but Doc explains this modification casually, as if floating cars are the most natural thing in the world. The sensation of lifting off is gentle, like being in a slow elevator. There's no jarring motion or frightening acceleration, just a smooth transition from ground to air. Marty looks down at the street below, watching the familiar neighborhood shrink beneath them. The houses look peaceful and still in the afternoon light, like a miniature model village. Doc activates the time circuits with his usual theatrical flair, but even his excitement seems calmer now, more focused. The digital display shows their destination, October 21st, 2015, 4:29 p.m. The red numbers glow softly in the afternoon light, and there's something almost hypnotic about watching them pulse gently as the system charges up. As they accelerate towards the crucial 88 miles per hour, Marty watches the speedometer climb steadily. The familiar electrical effects begin to build around the car, sparks and flashes of light that seem more magical than dangerous. Jennifer holds Marty's hand as they prepare for the jump through time, and her grip is warm and steady. When they reach the critical speed, the world around them explodes into brilliant light, and then everything becomes calm and quiet as they slip through the fabric of time itself. The DeLorean settles gently onto a street in Hill Valley, 2015. The first thing they notice is how quiet everything seems, despite being in a busy part of town. The air feels the same, still the familiar Hill Valley atmosphere. But everything around them has changed in fascinating ways. The buildings stretch higher into the sky, their surfaces gleaming with materials that seem to shift and shimmer in the light. But it's not overwhelming or frightening. Instead, the architecture feels organic, as if the town has simply grown and evolved naturally over the 30 years they've skipped. Cars float quietly past them at various heights, moving with the gentle grace of fish swimming through clear water. There's no noise of engines or honking horns, just a soft whooshing sound as vehicles glide by on invisible roads in the air. The whole scene has a dreamlike quality, peaceful and serene, despite all the activity. Doc parks the DeLorean in an alley and begins explaining what they need to do. His voice is calm and methodical as he outlines their mission. Marty's son will be approached by Griff Tannen, Biff's grandson, who will pressure him into participating in a crime. If Marty Jr. goes along with it, he'll be arrested and his life will be ruined. The entire McFly family's future depends on preventing this one moment. They walk towards the town square, and Marty marvels at how familiar yet different everything looks. The courthouse is still there, still the centerpiece of Hill Valley, but it's surrounded by new buildings that seem to grow from the ground like crystal formations. The clock tower, which played such an important role in his previous adventure, still stands tall and proud, though it's now surrounded by floating platforms and sky bridges. People move through the square with an easy, unhurried pace. Their clothing is colorful and practical, with fabrics that seem to adjust themselves to the weather. Some people wear shoes that hover slightly above the ground, making their steps silent and smooth. Despite all the technological marvels, there's something timeless about the way people interact, talking quietly, sharing meals at outdoor cafes, children playing in small parks elevated above the street level. The shops along the square have holographic signs that move and change, but they do so gently, without the harsh flashing that might hurt tired eyes. One shop advertises antique items from the 1980s, and Marty is amused to see objects from his own time displayed as historical curiosities. A Walkman sits in a display case labeled as an ancient portable music device. Doc points out various technological marvels as they walk, explaining each one with the enthusiasm of a tour guide showing off his favorite city. Flying cars move along designated air lanes, marked by soft, glowing lines. Robots sweep the streets with quiet efficiency. Gardens grow on the sides of buildings, their green plants creating a peaceful contrast to the metallic surfaces. As they walk through the peaceful streets, Doc explains more about the family they're trying to save. Marty's son, Martin Jr., looks remarkably like his father but lacks confidence. He's a gentle, nervous young man who works at a small job and struggles with the same self-doubt that once plagued his father. Marty's daughter, Marlene, is stronger and more determined, but she's also protective of her brother in ways that sometimes get her into trouble. The future Jennifer works part-time and spends most of her energy trying to keep the family together despite their financial struggles. She's still the same caring person Marty fell in love with, but 30 years of worry have made her more cautious, more afraid of taking risks. Doc describes their future home in a part of Hill Valley that's become run down over the years. The buildings are older, not as well maintained as the gleaming structures in the town center. But even these neighborhoods have a quiet dignity, like an old sweater that's been well loved and carefully mended over time. As they approach Cafe 80s, where the crucial meeting will take place, Doc points out the restaurant's nostalgic decorations. The 1980s theme seems quaint and old-fashioned to the people of 2015. The way the 1950s seemed to people in the 1980s. There's something gentle and amusing about seeing their own era treated as ancient history. Doc explains the plan with careful precision. Marty will need to disguise himself as his own son and take his place at the meeting with Griff Tannen. The idea sounds simple enough, but Doc warns that they must be very careful not to disturb anything else about the future while they're there. Jennifer will wait in the DeLorean while Marty and Doc handle the situation. Doc's instructions are clear and reassuring. Stay calm, handle the immediate problem, and return quickly to their own time. He makes it sound as straightforward as running a simple errand. As they prepare for their mission, the streets of future Hill Valley continue their quiet rhythm around them. People go about their daily lives, unaware that time travelers from the past are walking among them, trying to save one family's future. The sun casts long shadows between the buildings, creating patterns of light and darkness that shift gently as the floating vehicles pass overhead. The whole scene feels peaceful and purposeful, like the calm moment before a gentle rain begins to fall. Everything is in place for their mission to begin, and Doc's confidence helps settle any nervousness Marty might feel about impersonating his own son. Doc produces a bag of clothes from the future, explaining that Marty will need to dress exactly like his son to avoid suspicion. The clothing is comfortable and practical, a jacket that adjusts its own temperature, pants made from fabric that never wrinkles, and shoes that tie themselves with a soft, whirring sound. As Marty changes clothes, Doc applies some subtle makeup to help complete the disguise. The process is gentle and methodical, like an artist preparing a canvas. Doc works with the precision of someone who has planned every detail, but his movements are calm and unhurried. The most important part of the disguise is getting Marty's mannerisms right. His son is more hesitant, less confident than Marty himself. Doc coaches him to speak more softly, to hesitate before responding, to look down at his hands when he's nervous. These are small changes, but they transform Marty's entire presence. When the transformation is complete, Marty looks remarkably like his future son. The resemblance is strong enough to fool casual observers, but Doc reminds him that he must be careful not to spend too much time around people who know Martin Jr. well. The restaurant is filled with memorabilia from Marty's own time. Video games, music posters, and television screens playing old commercials. To Marty, these things represent his present, but to everyone else in 2015, they're charming relics from a bygone era. The atmosphere is warm and welcoming, like stepping into a living museum of his own youth. The staff members are dressed in 1980s costumes, complete with the hairstyles and makeup that were fashionable in Marty's time. They move through the restaurant with cheerful energy, serving customers who smile at the nostalgic atmosphere. There's something amusing about watching people from the future enjoying things that seem perfectly normal to Marty. The restaurant itself has a comfortable, lived-in feeling. The booths are soft and welcoming, the lighting is warm and gentle, and the background music plays at just the right volume to create ambiance without overwhelming conversation. Even though it's themed as a representation of the past, it feels timeless in its basic comfort and hospitality. Marty takes a seat at the designated booth and waits for Griff Tannen to arrive. The nervousness he feels is manageable, more like the anticipation before a school presentation than genuine fear. Doc has prepared him well, and the peaceful atmosphere of the restaurant helps keep him calm. When Griff Tannen enters the restaurant, he brings with him an energy that's different from his grandfather Biff, but recognizably from the same family line. Griff is younger and more impulsive, with cybernetic implants that enhance his physical capabilities, but also seem to amplify his aggressive tendencies. Despite his intimidating appearance, there's something almost pitiful about him. He's trying so hard to seem tough that he comes across more as insecure than truly dangerous. Griff approaches Marty's booth with his gang following behind him. They're an odd collection of young people trying to look threatening, but their efforts seem more like costumes than genuine menace. One of them has bionic implants that whir and click when he moves. Another has modified her hair to change colors with her mood. They're trying to be scary, but in the peaceful atmosphere of the restaurant, they seem more like children playing dress-up. When Griff sits down across from Marty, his proposal is delivered with the casual arrogance of someone who's never been told no. He wants Martin Jr. to help him rob the Hill Valley payroll substation. The plan is simple and, in Griff's mind, foolproof, but his confidence is built on the assumption that Martin Jr. will be too weak to refuse. Marty, still disguising his voice and mannerisms to match his son, listens carefully to Griff's proposal. The robbery plan is straightforward, but clearly illegal, exactly the kind of activity that would ruin young Martin's life if he got caught. Marty can see why his son might feel pressured to go along. Griff presents the idea as if refusal isn't really an option. When Marty politely but firmly refuses to participate in the robbery, Griff's reaction is swift, but not entirely unexpected. His face flushes with anger, and his cybernetic implants begin to glow more brightly. But even his anger has a theatrical quality, as if he's performing the role of a tough guy rather than genuinely feeling threatened. The confrontation escalates slowly, giving Marty time to think and respond. Griff calls him names and questions his courage, using the same tactics that Biff used on George McFly years earlier. But Marty has learned from his father's example and from his own experiences. He doesn't rise to the bait or let Griff's insults affect his composure. Other patrons in the restaurant begin to notice the disturbance, but no one seems genuinely frightened. This is apparently the kind of minor trouble that happens occasionally in any town, and the staff seems prepared to handle it with calm efficiency. The restaurant's peaceful atmosphere doesn't disappear entirely. It just shifts slightly, like a lake with a gentle breeze across its surface. When Griff realizes that intimidation isn't working, he tries a different approach. He offers Marty money and promises of protection, painting the robbery as an easy way to solve his family's financial problems. His voice becomes almost persuasive, and Marty can see how a desperate young man might be tempted by these offers. As the confrontation continues, Griff becomes more frustrated with Marty's continued refusal. Finally, he decides to settle the matter through force, challenging Marty to prove his courage through action rather than words. This leads them outside the restaurant, where the real adventure begins. In the town square, Griff produces a hoverboard, a skateboard-like device that floats effortlessly above the ground. He demonstrates its capabilities with showy moves, gliding smoothly across the square while his gang cheers him on. The hoverboard responds to his movements like an extension of his own body, turning and spinning with fluid grace. Marty watches this display with growing interest. The hoverboard reminds him of skateboarding, something he's always been good at. When Griff challenges him to a race, suggesting that if Marty wins, he'll be left alone, Marty finds himself accepting before he has time to think it through completely. A young girl nearby is riding her own hoverboard, a pink model that looks well used and comfortable. When Marty asks to borrow it, she hesitates only briefly before agreeing. Her hoverboard is smaller and simpler than Griff's high-tech model, but it has a friendly, approachable quality that suits Marty better. Stepping onto the hoverboard for the first time, Marty discovers that it responds very much like a skateboard, just without the need for solid ground. The sensation is strange at first, floating freely while maintaining balance, but his skateboarding experience serves him well. Within moments, he's gliding smoothly across the town square. The peaceful streets of Hill Valley provide the perfect backdrop for this unusual chase. The wide, clean avenues give them plenty of room to maneuver, and the sparse traffic means they don't have to worry about interfering with normal city life. Flying cars move calmly overhead, while pedestrians stop to watch the race with mild interest, rather than alarm. Griff leads the chase through the town square and toward the residential areas, his gang following close behind on their own hoverboards. They move like a flock of birds, staying in formation while adapting to the changing terrain. Their boards leave no marks on the ground and make very little noise, so the chase has an almost dreamlike quality. Marty follows, gradually gaining confidence with each turn and maneuver. The hoverboard responds to subtle shifts in his weight, allowing him to navigate around obstacles and match Griff's pace. The feeling is exhilarating, but not frightening, more like flying in a pleasant dream than engaging in a dangerous chase. As they race through the streets, Marty gets a unique view of future Hill Valley. The residential neighborhoods are quiet and well-maintained, with small gardens growing on rooftops and sides of buildings. Children play in elevated playgrounds that float above the sidewalks, their laughter mixing with the soft whoosh of the hoverboards passing below. Griff tries various tricks to discourage Marty, but his efforts seem more like showing off than genuine attempts to cause harm. He weaves between buildings, jumps over small obstacles, and performs aerial maneuvers that demonstrate his skill but don't really threaten his pursuer. It's as if he's more interested in proving his superiority than in actually winning the race. The chase leads them past the familiar landmarks of Hill Valley, all updated for the future, but still recognizable. The mall where Marty once played his fateful guitar audition now has multiple levels, connected by gentle ramps and moving walkways. The high school has expanded with new wings that seem to grow organically from the original building. Throughout the chase, the peaceful rhythm of the city continues around them. People going about their daily business pause to watch the race, some even cheering for one side or the other, but no one seems genuinely concerned about danger or disruption. It's as if this kind of activity is just part of the normal texture of life in future Hill Valley. The chase eventually leads back to the courthouse square where it started. Griff has planned this route carefully, intending to finish the race with a dramatic flourish in front of as many witnesses as possible. The square is busier now, with more people gathered to watch the conclusion of the race. As they approach the courthouse, Griff attempts his most ambitious maneuver yet. He aims his hoverboard towards the large fountain in the center of the square, planning to leap over it in a spectacular display of skill and daring. His gang spreads out to give him room, and spectators gather along the edges of the square to watch. But Griff's overconfidence becomes his downfall. The fountain is larger than he anticipated, and his hoverboard doesn't have quite enough power to carry him all the way across. Instead of a triumphant landing on the far side, he crashes into the fountain with a tremendous splash, soaking himself and anyone nearby. Marty, following a safer route around the fountain, glides smoothly to a stop near the courthouse steps. The race is over, and he's won simply by avoiding Griff's reckless mistake. The gathered crowd applauds politely, more amused than excited by the conclusion of the chase. Griff's crash into the fountain attracts the attention of the Hill Valley police, who arrive quickly but without urgency. They seem to know Griff well, and their manner suggests this isn't his first public disturbance. The officers are professional and calm, treating the situation more like a routine matter than a serious crime. As the police help Griff out of the fountain, his gang members quietly disappear into the crowd. They're clearly more interested in avoiding trouble than in helping their leader deal with the consequences of his actions. Griff finds himself alone, dripping wet and facing arrest for disturbing the peace. The arrest itself is gentle and civilized. The police officers are polite but firm, explaining the charges against Griff while leading him towards their vehicle. There's no drama or violence, just the quiet efficiency of a well-organized legal system handling a minor infraction. Marty watches from a safe distance as Griff is taken away. The young man's capture means that he won't be available to pressure Martin Jr. into joining the robbery attempt. The mission is accomplished, and the future of the McFly family is secure, at least for now. While Marty has been dealing with Griff, Jennifer has been having her own adventure. Despite Doc's instructions to stay with the DeLorean, she's been discovered by the police and taken to the McFly house in Hilldale, the residential development where the family lives in 2015. The police officers who found her unconscious in the alley were concerned for her welfare. In the future, it's unusual for someone to be found lying in an alley without identification, so they followed standard procedure and brought her to what they believed was her home address. Their actions were motivated by kindness and civic duty rather than suspicion or law enforcement concerns. The McFly house in Hilldale is modest but comfortable, the kind of place where a working-class family might live. The neighborhood has seen better days, but it's still maintained with quiet dignity. Small gardens grow in front of each house, and children play in the streets under the watchful eyes of their parents. When Jennifer awakens inside the house, she's confused and disoriented. The furnishings are familiar yet strange, recognizable items that have aged 30 years, mixed with new technology that she doesn't understand. Family photographs show faces she knows but older, lined with years of experience she hasn't lived yet. The most shocking moment comes when Jennifer encounters her older self. The future Jennifer is still recognizably the same person, but 30 years of life have changed her in subtle ways. She's more cautious, more worn down by financial struggles and family responsibilities. Her movements are slower, more careful, as if she's learned to conserve energy for the things that matter most. The two Jennifers stare at each other in mutual amazement. The older Jennifer assumes she's looking in a mirror or experiencing some kind of breakdown brought on by stress. The younger Jennifer realizes she's seeing her own future, and it's both fascinating and slightly troubling. This isn't the life she had imagined for herself. Their conversation is brief and careful. Both women are trying to understand what's happening without revealing too much information that might change the future. The older Jennifer talks about her children, her financial worries, and her husband's struggles with self-confidence. The younger Jennifer listens, trying to process this glimpse of what lies ahead. The house itself tells part of their story. It's clean and well kept, but everything is chosen for practicality rather than beauty. The furniture is sturdy and functional. The decorations are few and meaningful, rather than numerous and showy. It's the home of a family that works hard and loves each other, but struggles to make ends meet. When Doc and Marty arrive to rescue Jennifer, they find her unconscious on the sofa, where her future self left her. The older Jennifer, overwhelmed by the encounter, has retreated to her bedroom to process what she's experienced. The whole house feels quiet and still, like a family holding its breath. Doc works quickly but carefully to revive Jennifer without causing any disturbance to the sleeping family. His movements are gentle and precise, like a doctor making a house call. He checks her pulse, adjusts her position, and speaks to her in soft, reassuring tones as she gradually awakens. As Jennifer comes around, she's initially confused about where she is and what has happened. The encounter with her future self feels like a strange dream, and she's not entirely sure what was real and what was imagination. Doc and Marty help her to her feet, supporting her as she regains her balance. Their escape from the house is as quiet as their arrival. They move through the darkened rooms like shadows, careful not to wake anyone or disturb anything that might change the future. The sleeping house remains peaceful around them as they slip back into the night. While Doc, Marty, and Jennifer have been dealing with their various adventures, old Biff Tannen has been watching from the shadows. The elderly Biff works as a maintenance man at the courthouse, a job that gives him access to many parts of Hill Valley while keeping him largely invisible to most residents. Biff has always been observant, and the sight of a DeLorean time machine in the town square has caught his attention immediately. He recognizes the vehicle from stories he's heard, and his natural curiosity compels him to investigate further. His approach is careful and methodical, like a predator stalking prey. When he discovers that the DeLorean is indeed a time machine, Old Biff realizes he's stumbled upon an opportunity that could change everything. His mind, still sharp despite his age, quickly formulates a plan that could give him everything he's ever wanted. The discovery fills him with an excitement he hasn't felt in years. But Biff is patient and cunning. Rather than acting immediately, he decides to wait and observe, gathering more information before making his move. He retreats to a safe distance and watches as Doc, Marty, and Jennifer return to their vehicle, planning his next steps with the careful deliberation of someone who has learned from a lifetime of mistakes. Before they leave 2015, Marty makes what seems like a harmless purchase at an antique shop. He buys a sports almanac that contains the results of every major sporting event from 1950 to 2000. To Marty, it's just an interesting souvenir, a way to remember their trip to the future. The almanac is a thick book with a bright cover, filled with statistics, scores, and records from decades of sporting events. The pages are glossy and colorful, with photographs and charts that make it look more like a coffee table book than a reference guide. To someone from 2015, it's a nostalgic look back at the sports history of the previous century. As they prepare to return to 1985, Marty flips through the almanac casually, noting games he remembers watching and scores he recognizes. The information seems harmless enough, just historical facts about events that have already happened. He has no idea that this innocent-looking book will soon cause tremendous problems. Doc notices Marty's purchase, but doesn't immediately recognize its potential for danger. His mind is focused on completing their mission and returning safely to their own time. The successful rescue of the McFly family's future has put him in a good mood, and he's looking forward to getting home and celebrating their victory. As they settle back into the DeLorean, the peaceful evening air of future Hill Valley surrounds them. The town is settling into its nighttime rhythm, with fewer flying cars moving through the air lanes and more people walking quietly through the illuminated streets. The soft glow of the city's lighting creates a gentle, dreamlike atmosphere. Doc performs his pre-flight checks with the same methodical care he always shows, verifying that all systems are functioning properly before they attempt to return to 1985. His movements are smooth and practiced, like a pilot preparing for a routine flight. The DeLorean hums softly around them, its systems warming up for the journey through time. Jennifer sits quietly in the back seat, still processing everything she's experienced. The glimpse of her future self has given her much to think about, but she's not ready to discuss it yet. Instead, she watches the peaceful city around them, noting how different yet familiar everything looks. Marty reviews their adventure with satisfaction. They've accomplished everything they came to do, saved his son from a life of crime, prevented his daughter from making the same mistake, and ensured that the McFly family's future will be happier than it would have been. The mission has been a complete success. As Doc inputs the coordinates for their return to 1985, Old Biff quietly approaches the DeLorean. His years of working as a maintenance man have taught him how to move silently and avoid notice, skills that serve him well now. He's spent the time since their arrival carefully studying the time machine and formulating his plan. When Doc steps away from the vehicle to dispose of Marty's sports almanac in a nearby trash can, Biff sees his opportunity. Moving with surprising speed for his age, he slips into the DeLorean and activates the time circuits. His familiarity with machinery, gained from decades of working various jobs, helps him understand the basic operation of the controls. The sound of the DeLorean starting up alerts Doc and Marty, but by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late. Old Biff accelerates down the street, the time machine's electrical effects beginning to build around him as he approaches the crucial speed. Within moments, he vanishes in a flash of light, leaving Doc and Marty stranded in 2015. The theft happened so quickly and quietly that most people in the area don't even notice. Those who do see the flash of light dismiss it as some kind of unusual but harmless electrical phenomenon. The peaceful evening continues undisturbed around Doc and Marty as they stand in shock, trying to process what has just happened. Old Biff's destination is November 12th, 1955, the same day when young Marty McFly was helping his parents fall in love at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. Biff has chosen this date carefully, knowing that his younger self will be recovering from his encounter with Marty and will be receptive to advice that might change his fortunes. The trip through time is rougher for Biff than it was for the others. He's not accustomed to time travel, and the sensation leaves him dizzy and disoriented. But his determination keeps him focused on his goal. This is his chance to rewrite his entire life, and he's not going to let physical discomfort stop him. When the DeLorean materializes in 1955 Hill Valley, Biff finds himself in the familiar surroundings of his youth. The town looks exactly as he remembers it, smaller, quieter, with less traffic and simpler buildings. The sight of his hometown as it was 30 years ago fills him with nostalgia and renewed purpose. He parks the DeLorean in a secluded spot and retrieves Marty's sports almanac from where he found it in the trash. The book represents unlimited wealth and power to someone with knowledge of future events. With this almanac, young Biff could bet on sporting events with perfect accuracy, accumulating enormous wealth over the following decades. Finding his younger self isn't difficult. Young Biff is exactly where old Biff expected him to be, nursing his wounds from his recent encounter with Marty and plotting ways to get revenge. The young man is angry and frustrated, exactly the right mood to accept an opportunity for future success. Old Biff approaches his younger self carefully, knowing that the conversation will require delicate handling. He presents himself as a mysterious benefactor with inside information, rather than revealing his true identity as his future self. The sports almanac is presented as a guaranteed path to wealth and success. Young Biff is initially skeptical, but the accuracy of the information in the almanac is undeniable. Old Biff demonstrates its reliability by showing him results from recent sporting events that young Biff remembers. The consistency of the information gradually convinces the younger man that this is a genuine opportunity. The transaction is completed quickly and quietly. Old Biff gives his younger self the almanac, along with instructions on how to use it most effectively. He emphasizes the importance of discretion, warning young Biff not to let anyone else know about his source of information. With the almanac safely in his younger self's hands, old Biff returns to the DeLorean for the journey back to 2015. When old Biff returns to 2015, he's careful to place the DeLorean exactly where he found it, hoping that Doc and Marty won't realize it was ever missing. The round trip has taken only a few minutes from their perspective, and he believes he can convince them that he was simply examining the vehicle out of curiosity. However, the journey has taken a toll on him. The physical strain of time travel, combined with the excitement of changing his past, has left him exhausted and disoriented. He moves more slowly now, and there's something different about his expression, a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty about what he's set in motion. Doc and Marty find him leaning against the DeLorean, apparently trying to catch his breath. When they question him about what he was doing, he claims he was just looking at the interesting machinery. His explanation seems plausible enough, and they're too eager to return to their own time to investigate further. As they prepare for departure, old Biff watches them with knowing eyes. He's aware that they'll soon discover what he's done, but by then, it will be too late to stop the changes he's put in motion. The knowledge gives him a satisfaction he hasn't felt in decades, even as the physical effects of time travel continue to weaken him. Doc starts the DeLorean, and they lift off into the evening sky above Hill Valley, 2015. The city spreads out below them like a peaceful constellation of lights, with flying cars moving quietly along their designated routes and buildings glowing softly in the darkness. It's a beautiful sight, and for a moment they can simply enjoy the view without worrying about the complications of time travel. As they accelerate toward 88 miles per hour, the familiar electrical effects begin to build around the car. Jennifer, still tired from her adventure in the future McFly house, closes her eyes and prepares for the jump through time. The sensation has become somewhat routine now, though it still carries a sense of wonder and possibility. The transition through time happens smoothly, with the bright flash of light giving way to the familiar darkness of 1985. They're returning to the evening of the same day they left, just a few minutes after their original departure. From their perspective, they've been gone for hours, but to the rest of Hill Valley, they never left at all. As the DeLorean settles gently onto the street in Lyon Estates, everything looks exactly as they left it. The houses are dark and quiet in the evening stillness. Streetlights cast their familiar pools of warm light on the pavement, and the air carries the comfortable scents and sounds of their own time. There's something deeply reassuring about being back in their proper place in the timeline. At first, everything seems perfectly normal. The neighborhood looks exactly as it should, and their initial relief at being safely home overshadows any concerns about what old Biff might have done in 1955. Doc begins shutting down the DeLorean systems while Marty helps the still groggy Jennifer out of the car. But as they move through the familiar streets toward Marty's house, small details begin to seem wrong. The streetlights are positioned differently than Marty remembers. Some of the houses have been modified or replaced entirely. The changes are subtle at first, the kind of differences you might attribute to memory playing tricks or simply not having noticed these details before. The first major sign that something is seriously wrong comes when they reach Marty's house. Instead of the modest family home he grew up in, they find a much smaller, shabbier building. The yard is unkempt, the paint is peeling, and there are bars on the windows. This isn't the warm, welcoming home where Marty has spent his entire life. Doc notices the changes, too, his scientific mind immediately recognizing the implications. If Marty's house is different, then other things have changed as well. Something has altered the timeline, creating a new version of 1985 that bears only superficial resemblance to the world they know. As they venture further into town, the extent of the changes becomes increasingly apparent. Hill Valley in this timeline is a much rougher, more dangerous place. Many of the familiar businesses have been replaced by adult bookstores, gun shops, and establishments with barred windows and neon signs. The streets that were once safe and welcoming now feel threatening and unpredictable. the people they encounter are different too. Instead of the friendly, community-minded citizens they remember, the residents of this hill valley seem wary and suspicious. They keep to themselves, hurrying along the sidewalks with their heads down, avoiding eye contact with strangers. The sense of community that once characterized the town has been replaced by an atmosphere of fear and mistrust. Even the architecture tells a story of decline and neglect. Buildings that were once well maintained now show signs of decay and abandonment. Graffiti covers many walls, broken windows have been boarded up rather than repaired, and the overall impression is of a town that has given up hope for better days. The courthouse square, which has always been the heart of Hill Valley, reflects the general decline of the community. The beautiful old courthouse building is still there, but it's surrounded by empty lots where other historic buildings once stood. The clock tower still functions, but its face is cracked and several of the numbers have fallen off. The most shocking discovery comes when they find what was once the site of Hill Valley's historical museum. In its place stands a garish monument to Biff Tannen, complete with neon signs, gambling establishments, and a massive statue of Biff himself. The building proclaims itself as the Biff Tannen Museum, celebrating the man as if he were some kind of local hero. The museum's exterior is covered with photographs and newspaper headlines documenting Biff's rise to power and wealth. According to these displays, Biff became wealthy through a series of successful gambling ventures in the 1950s and 1960s, eventually accumulating enough money to become one of the most powerful men in the state. The timeline presented in the museum shows Biff using his wealth to gain political influence, eventually becoming a kingmaker who could make or break local politicians with his financial support. The tone of the displays suggests that Biff's rise to power was inevitable and admirable, rather than the result of cheating and corruption. Doc and Marty study these displays with growing horror, beginning to understand how drastically the timeline has been altered. The sports almanac that old Biff took back to 1955 has allowed his younger self to accumulate vast wealth and power, transforming him from a simple bully into one of the most influential men in the region. Inside the museum, they discover even more disturbing information about this alternate version of Hill Valley. Biff's wealth and influence have corrupted the entire community, turning it into a place where might makes right and ordinary citizens live in fear of crossing the wrong people. The exhibits proudly display Biff's various business ventures, though careful reading reveals that many of these enterprises are actually fronts for illegal activities. The museum presents these ventures as legitimate businesses, but the underlying reality is that Biff has used his gambling winnings to build a criminal empire that extends far beyond Hill Valley. One particularly disturbing exhibit shows how Biff has used his influence to manipulate local elections and legal proceedings. Judges, police officers, and city officials all owe their positions to Biff's support, creating a system where justice serves the interests of the powerful rather than protecting the innocent. The museum also contains information about Biff's personal life in this timeline, including his marriage to Lorraine Baines McFly. The displays present this as a romantic success story, but the underlying implications are much darker. In this timeline, Biff has used his wealth and power to force Lorraine into a marriage she never wanted. Perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery is what happened to George McFly in this alternate timeline. According to the museum's records, George was found shot to death in 1973, the victim of what was officially ruled a random burglary. However, the timing of his death, coming just a few years after Biff's marriage to Lorraine, suggests a much more sinister explanation. The newspaper clippings in the museum treat George's death as a minor local tragedy, barely worth more than a few paragraphs. There was no serious investigation, no arrests made, and no justice for the man who was once destined to become a successful science fiction author and loving father. Marty stares at these newspaper clippings in shock and grief. In the proper timeline, George McFly grew into a confident, successful man who published science fiction novels and provided a stable, loving home for his family. In this twisted alternate reality, he never had the chance to reach his potential, cut down by forces too powerful for him to resist. The casual way the museum presents George's death, as just another unfortunate incident in Hill Valley's history, makes the tragedy even more painful. In this world, George McFly's life and death are considered so insignificant that they barely rate a mention in the historical record. Doc pulls Marty away from the disturbing exhibits and finds a quiet corner where they can talk without being overheard. His explanation of what has happened is delivered in calm, scientific terms, but the implications are devastating. By giving the sports almanac to his younger self, old Biff has created an alternate timeline where history has been fundamentally altered. In this new timeline, young Biff used the almanac to win a series of increasingly large bets on sporting events throughout the 1950s and 1960s. His perfect winning streak was attributed to remarkable luck and insight rather than cheating, since no one could imagine that he had access to information from the future. As Biff's wealth grew, so did his influence and power. He used his money to corrupt local officials, intimidate rivals, and gradually take control of Hill Valley's political and economic systems. By the 1970s, he was powerful enough to eliminate anyone who stood in his way, including George McFly. The most disturbing aspect of this alternate timeline is how completely it has replaced the original. This isn't just a variation on the world they know. It's a completely different reality, where good people suffer and evil triumphs. The Hill Valley they grew up in has been erased, replaced by a nightmare version where fear and corruption rule. Despite the overwhelming nature of what they've discovered, Doc remains optimistic about their ability to set things right. The solution, he explains, is relatively straightforward in theory. They need to travel back to 1955 and prevent old Biff from giving the almanac to his younger self. The challenge will be timing and execution. They need to arrive in 1955 before the almanac changes hands, retrieve it from young Biff, and destroy it before it can do any more damage to the timeline. This will restore the original sequence of events and eliminate this alternate reality. Doc's confidence is reassuring, but he also acknowledges the risks involved. Time travel is always dangerous, and they'll be operating in a timeline that's already been disrupted. They'll need to be extremely careful not to create any additional paradoxes or complications that might make the situation worse. As they prepare to leave the museum and return to the DeLorean, Doc emphasizes the importance of working quickly. Every moment they spend in this alternate timeline increases the risk of further complications, and they can't be sure how stable this new reality actually is. Back at the DeLorean, Doc begins making the necessary adjustments for another trip through time. The process is more complex now, because they're operating from an alternate timeline rather than their proper place in history. Every calculation has to be checked and double-checked to ensure they arrive at the right moment in 1955. Jennifer is still unconscious in the back seat, and Doc decides it's safer to leave her that way for now. The fewer people they have to keep track of during their mission, the better their chances of success. He adjusts her position to make her more comfortable and checks her vital signs to make sure she's stable. Marty watches the preparations with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. This trip feels more urgent and dangerous than their previous adventures. They're not just trying to fix a problem now. They're trying to undo a catastrophe that has already happened. The stakes have never been higher. The streets of Alternate Hill Valley remain quiet around them as they work, but there's an underlying tension in the air. Even in the darkness, they can sense the fear and corruption that permeate this version of their hometown. Every shadow might hide a threat, and every sound could signal danger approaching. Doc sets the time circuits for November 12, 1955, the same date when young Biff received the almanac from his older self, and also the night of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. This means they'll be arriving at a time when the past version of Marty is also in 1955, creating the potential for serious complications if the two Martys encounter each other. The complexity of the situation requires careful planning. They'll need to locate young Biff, recover the almanac, and destroy it without interfering with the events that allowed past Marty to help his parents fall in love. Any disruption to those original events could create even more problems with the timeline. Doc explains the importance of staying hidden from past Marty and past Doc. If the earlier versions of themselves discover that time travelers from the future are present, it could create a paradox that might tear apart the fabric of time itself. They'll need to work in secret, accomplishing their mission while remaining completely invisible to their past selves. The DeLorean systems hum to life as Doc completes the pre-flight checks. The familiar sounds and sensations provide some comfort in the midst of their dire situation. Whatever challenges await them in 1955, at least they have a reliable machine to carry them there and back. The journey through time delivers them to Hill Valley on the evening of November 12th, 1955. The town square is bustling with activity as teenagers and their families arrive for the Enchantment Under the Sea dance at Hill Valley High School. The contrast with the alternate 1985 they just left is stark and immediate. This is the Hill Valley they remember, full of hope and community spirit. Doc parks the DeLorean in a secluded spot behind some buildings where it won't be noticed by the dance attendees. The location gives them easy access to the main part of town, while keeping their time machine safely hidden from curious eyes. The familiar surroundings of 1955 Hill Valley feel like a homecoming after the nightmare they've just escaped. The sounds of the evening drift across the town square. Music from the high school gymnasium, laughter from young couples walking to the dance, and the general bustle of a community celebrating together. It's exactly the kind of warm, friendly atmosphere that was completely absent from the alternate timeline they just left. Marty feels a strong emotional response to being back in 1955, even though he was here just recently from his perspective. This version of Hill Valley represents everything good about his hometown: the sense of community, the optimism about the future, and the basic decency of people who look out for each other. Their first challenge is finding young Biff without being seen by past Marty or past Doc, who are somewhere in town dealing with the events that will lead to the dance and the successful pairing of George and Lorraine McFly. Doc has studied the timeline carefully and believes he knows where young Biff will be during the crucial hours. According to Doc's calculations, young Biff should be at his home, nursing the injuries he received earlier in the day during his encounter with past Marty. This means he'll be away from the main social events of the evening, making it easier for them to approach him without being noticed by others. They move carefully through the quiet residential streets, staying in the shadows and avoiding the main thoroughfares where they might encounter people heading to or from the dance. The neighborhood where Biff lives is modest but well-maintained, representing the working-class respectability that characterized much of 1950s Hill Valley. As they approach Biff's house, they can see lights in the windows and hear the sound of a television playing inside. The scene looks peaceful and domestic, giving no hint of the cosmic importance of what's about to happen. Inside that ordinary house, young Biff possesses a book that will either destroy the future or be prevented from doing so. Rather than confronting young Biff directly, Doc decides they should first observe and confirm that he actually has the sports almanac. They position themselves where they can see into Biff's room through his window, being careful to stay hidden in the darkness beyond the range of the interior lighting. Young Biff is indeed in his room, and he's studying something intently. Even from their hiding place, they can see that he's holding a book that matches the description of the sports almanac. He appears to be memorizing information, occasionally writing notes on a piece of paper as he reads. The sight of young Biff with the almanac confirms their worst fears. The damage has already been done, and the alternate timeline they escaped from is the result of the book's influence on his younger self. Unless they can recover and destroy the almanac, that nightmare version of the future will become reality. Biff's behavior as he studies the book reveals his growing understanding of its potential. He's clearly excited by what he's reading, occasionally grinning or chuckling to himself as he processes the information. There's something chilling about watching him discover the power that will eventually corrupt him and destroy so many lives. Doc and Marty retreat to a safe distance to plan their approach. The almanac needs to be recovered, but they can't simply break into Biff's house and steal it. Any violent or dramatic action might attract attention from neighbors, or worse, interfere with past Marty's mission at the dance. Their solution needs to be subtle and clever, something that will get Biff away from the almanac long enough for them to retrieve it. Doc suggests creating a distraction that will draw Biff out of his house, leaving the book unguarded so they can slip in and take it. The distraction they choose is elegantly simple. Doc will create a minor emergency outside Biff's house, something that requires immediate attention, but isn't serious enough to involve the police or create lasting consequences. While Biff is dealing with the distraction, Marty will slip into the house and grab the almanac. As they prepare to put their plan into action, they can hear music drifting across town from the high school dance. The sound reminds them that past Marty is probably right now helping his parents fall in love, ensuring his own existence and the proper timeline. The irony isn't lost on them that they are trying to preserve that same timeline from a completely different threat. Doc positions himself near Biff's car, which is parked in the driveway outside the house. Using some basic mechanical knowledge, he creates a small problem with the engine that will require immediate attention, but can be easily fixed once the almanac is recovered. The sound of the car backfiring and smoking is loud enough to get Biff's attention without waking the entire neighborhood. The plan works perfectly. Young Biff hears the noise and immediately comes outside to investigate, leaving his bedroom window open and the almanac lying on his desk where he was studying it. His concern for his car, one of his most prized possessions, overrides any thought of securing the valuable book he'd just received. While Biff is distracted by his car trouble, Marty slips quietly through the open window into the bedroom. The room is typical of a teenage boy in the 1950s, with sports memorabilia on the walls and clothes scattered around the floor. The almanac sits on the desk exactly where Biff left it, still open to a page of baseball statistics. Marty grabs the almanac quickly but carefully, making sure not to disturb anything else in the room that might alert Biff to what has happened. The book feels heavier than it looked, weighted with the knowledge of decades of sporting events that shouldn't be known to anyone in 1955. Unfortunately, Biff realizes what has happened sooner than expected. Whether he heard a sound from his room or simply had an intuitive sense that something was wrong, he abandons his car and rushes back toward the house just as Marty is climbing out of the window with the almanac. The two young men spot each other immediately, and Biff's reaction is swift and angry. This isn't just about the book. It's about being outsmarted and robbed by someone he considers inferior. His pride is wounded as much as his future prospects, and he responds with the kind of rage that has always been his first reaction to being frustrated. Marty runs toward the DeLorean with Biff in hot pursuit, clutching the almanac tightly as he navigates through the dark streets of 1955 Hill Valley. Behind him, he can hear Biff shouting threats and promises of revenge, his voice echoing off the quiet houses of the residential neighborhood. The chase leads them away from Biff's house and toward the more commercial area of town, where there are more places to hide, but also more opportunities for their conflict to be witnessed by others. Marty needs to reach Doc and the time machine without creating a spectacle that might interfere with past Marty's activities at the dance. As they run through Hill Valley's town square, the contrast with the alternate timeline becomes even more apparent. This is the Hill Valley that Marty grew up hearing about from his parents, safe, clean, and full of people who care about each other and their community. The buildings are well maintained, the streets are clean, and there's an overall sense of optimism and prosperity. The courthouse clock tower stands tall and proud in the center of the square, its face clearly visible and all its numbers intact. This is the same clock tower that will play a crucial role in getting past Marty back to his own time, and seeing it in perfect condition feels like a good omen for their own mission. Despite the late hour, there are still people moving through the square, couples walking home from dates, teenagers heading to or from the dance, and adults enjoying the pleasant evening air. Their presence means Marty has to be careful not to draw too much attention as he flees from Biff, but it also provides some cover for his escape. The familiar landmarks of 1955 Hill Valley provide both comfort and urgency. This is the world that needs to be preserved, the timeline that leads to the Hill Valley they know and love. Every step Marty takes while carrying the almanac is a step toward protecting that future. Young Biff's pursuit is relentless and increasingly desperate. The almanac represents more than just money to him. It represents power, respect, and the chance to never be humiliated again. His determination to recover it drives him to run faster and think more clearly than he usually does, making him a more dangerous opponent than expected. As they run through the streets, Biff tries various tactics to slow Marty down. He shouts for help from passers-by, claiming that Marty is a thief who has stolen something valuable. He throws whatever objects he can grab: trash cans, bottles, anything that might trip up his quarry or force him to change direction. The chase begins to attract attention from other people in the area. Some are simply curious about the noise and commotion, while others are genuinely concerned that they're witnessing a crime in progress. The growing number of witnesses makes the situation more complicated and potentially dangerous. Marty realizes that he can't simply outrun Biff indefinitely. The other young man knows these streets better and has the advantage of righteous anger to fuel his pursuit. Instead, Marty needs to be smarter, using his knowledge of the town and his experience with similar situations to outmaneuver his pursuer. Biff manages to reach his car despite the mechanical problems Doc created, and after a few attempts, gets it running well enough to continue the pursuit. The chase now shifts from foot to vehicle, with Biff using his car to try to cut off Marty's escape routes and force him into a confrontation. Marty finds himself running through alleys and side streets, always staying just ahead of Biff's car, but never able to completely escape. The sound of the engine behind him creates a constant sense of urgency, and he knows that one wrong turn or moment of hesitation could end their mission in failure. Doc, hearing the noise of the chase, brings the DeLorean out of hiding to help rescue Marty. The sight of the time machine emerging from the shadows is both reassuring and alarming. Reassuring because it represents safety and escape. Alarming because its presence in 1955 creates additional risks of timeline contamination. The two vehicles, Biff's 1950s car and the futuristic DeLorean, begin a strange kind of dance through the streets of Hill Valley. Doc drives with the skill and precision of someone who has spent years working with complex machinery, while Biff drives with the aggressive determination of someone who has nothing left to lose. In a moment of desperation and inspiration, Marty makes a decision that surprises everyone, including himself. When Biff's car passes close enough, Marty leaps onto the roof, holding onto the almanac with one hand and gripping the car with the other. The move is dangerous but effective, putting him in position to confront Biff directly while the car is moving. The sensation of riding on top of a moving car is both terrifying and exhilarating. The wind whips through Marty's hair, the engine noise is deafening, and every bump in the road threatens to throw him off. But he's also never felt more focused or determined. The future of his family and his entire world depends on his actions in the next few minutes. From his position on the roof, Marty can see the town of Hill Valley spread out around them. The familiar streets and buildings look different from this perspective, but they're still recognizably the places where he grew up. The sight strengthens his resolve to protect this timeline and prevent it from being replaced by the nightmare version they escaped. Biff tries various maneuvers to shake Marty loose from his car, swerving back and forth and driving under low branches that force Marty to duck and hold on even tighter. But Marty's determination matches Biff's, and he refuses to be dislodged from his precarious perch. The chase leads them into one of Hill Valley's tunnels, where the enclosed space intensifies every sound and sensation. The noise of the car engine echoes off the tunnel walls, creating a thunderous roar that makes communication almost impossible. The overhead lights flash by in regular intervals, creating a strobe effect that makes everything seem surreal and dreamlike. In the tunnel, Biff finally manages to reach up and grab the almanac, starting a physical struggle between the two young men, while the car continues speeding through the confined space. They wrestle for control of the book, each knowing that whoever possesses it when the struggle ends will determine the future of Hill Valley, and everyone who lives there. The fight is awkward and dangerous, conducted while both participants are trying to maintain their balance on a moving vehicle in an enclosed space. Neither has a clear advantage. Marty has the benefit of knowing what's at stake, while Biff has the advantage of anger and desperation to fuel his efforts. During the struggle, pages begin tearing loose from the almanac and flying through the tunnel behind them. Each lost page represents years of sporting events and potential gambling winnings, making both fighters even more desperate to claim the remaining portions of the book. As they emerge from the tunnel, Marty realizes that physical strength alone won't be enough to resolve this conflict. Instead, he needs to use the one advantage he has over Biff, his knowledge of what the almanac will do to the future if it remains intact. The only solution is to destroy the book completely, ensuring that it can never be used to corrupt the timeline. Using a cigarette lighter he finds in Biff's car, Marty sets fire to the almanac while still holding portions of it. The flames spread quickly through the remaining pages, turning decades of sporting statistics into smoke and ash. The sight of the burning book fills Marty with both triumph and sadness. Triumph at saving the future, sadness at the dramatic lengths necessary to do so. Biff's reaction to seeing the almanac burn is one of pure rage and despair. He watches his dreams of wealth and power literally going up in smoke, and his response is to become even more reckless and dangerous. The burning book transforms him from someone trying to recover stolen property into someone seeking revenge at any cost. As the last pages of the almanac crumble into ash, Marty feels a strange sensation, as if the world around him is shifting and changing. The alternate timeline that created the nightmare version of 1985 is beginning to dissolve, replaced by the proper sequence of events that leads to the future they know and love. Just as Marty thinks their mission is complete, disaster strikes in the most unexpected way. A sudden thunderstorm that has been building all evening finally breaks, bringing with it the kind of dramatic lightning that Hill Valley is known for. One particularly powerful bolt strikes the DeLorean just as Doc is preparing to rescue Marty from his confrontation with Biff. The lightning strike overloads the time circuits, sending the DeLorean spinning uncontrollably through time. Doc, who was driving the car at the moment of impact, is carried along with it, disappearing in a flash of light and electrical energy. One moment he was there, ready to help complete their mission, and the next moment he was gone, leaving no trace except the smell of ozone and the memory of his shocked expression. Marty watches in horror as his friend and partner disappears into the time stream. The successful destruction of the almanac suddenly seems insignificant compared to the loss of Doc Brown. Without the DeLorean, and without Doc's expertise, Marty is stranded in 1955 with no apparent way to return to his own time. The storm passes as quickly as it came, leaving the streets of Hill Valley wet and glistening under the streetlights. The sudden quiet after the dramatic lightning strike makes Doc's disappearance seem even more surreal and final. Marty stands alone in the 1955 night, holding the ashes of the almanac and wondering if he'll ever see his friend again. Standing in the rain-soaked streets of 1955 Hill Valley, Marty faces a situation more desperate than anything he's encountered in his adventures through time. The almanac is destroyed, which means the timeline should be restored to its proper course. But he's now stranded 30 years in the past, with no way home and no idea what happened to Doc. The familiar sights and sounds of 1955 Hill Valley, which seemed so comforting during their mission, now feel strange and alien. This isn't his time, and despite the successful completion of their primary objective, he's further from home than ever. The wet streets reflect the streetlights like mirrors, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere that emphasizes his isolation. Biff, defeated and no longer in possession of the almanac, has given up his pursuit and disappeared into the night. His dreams of wealth and power have literally gone up in smoke, leaving him to return to his normal life as a bully and troublemaker. Without the almanac to change his future, he'll remain the same petty antagonist he was always meant to be. Marty walks slowly through the empty streets, trying to process what has happened and figure out what to do next. The rain has stopped, but the air still smells of electricity from the lightning strike. Every step takes him further from the spot where Doc disappeared, but he has no reason to stay there and no idea where else to go. Just as Marty is beginning to despair of ever finding a solution to his predicament, he's approached by a Western Union delivery man who has been searching for him throughout Hill Valley. The man is elderly and patient, with the kind of dedication to duty that characterized service workers in the 1950s. He explains that he's been looking for Marty because he has a very important telegram to deliver. The telegram, the delivery man explains, has been in Western Union's files for 70 years, with instructions to deliver it to Marty McFly at this exact location on this exact date. The precision of the timing and the specificity of the instructions suggest that whoever sent the telegram knew exactly when and where Marty would be. As Marty takes the telegram, his hands tremble slightly with anticipation and hope. The envelope is yellowed with age, bearing stamps and postmarks from decades ago, but his name is written clearly on the front in handwriting that looks familiar. The sight of his own name on a 70-year-old telegram creates a strange feeling of destiny and purpose. The delivery man departs with a cheerful tip of his hat, leaving Marty alone under a streetlight to read what may be the most important message of his life. The quiet street around him feels suspended in time, as if the entire universe is waiting to see what the telegram contains. Opening the telegram with trembling fingers, Marty discovers that it's from Doc Brown, sent from September 1st, 1885. The message is brief but clear. Doc survived the lightning strike, but has been transported back to the Old West, where he's been living for several months. He's safe and has established himself as a blacksmith, but he's stranded in 1885 with no way to repair or refuel the DeLorean. The telegram instructs Marty to find the 1955 version of Doc Brown and show him the message. Past Doc will understand the situation and will know how to retrieve both Marty and future Doc from their respective time periods. The plan sounds complicated, but it's the first ray of hope. Marty has had since watching the DeLorean disappear in a flash of lightning. The telegram also contains a warning. Doc has hidden the DeLorean in a place where it will remain undisturbed until 1955, but Marty must be careful not to interfere with past Doc's work on the original time travel experiment. Any disruption to those events could prevent the invention of time travel altogether, trapping them both in the past forever. Armed with this new information, Marty sets off through the quiet streets of Hill Valley toward Doc's laboratory. The walk gives him time to think about everything that has happened and everything that still needs to be accomplished. The night air is cool and clean after the rain, carrying the familiar sense of a small town in the 1950s. Doc's lab in 1955 is located in a large garage behind his house, filled with the same kind of elaborate scientific equipment that will characterize his work for decades to come. Even in 1955, Doc Brown is known throughout Hill Valley as an eccentric inventor whose experiments produce spectacular failures and occasional brilliant successes. As Marty approaches the lab, he can see lights on inside and hear the sounds of machinery running. Past Doc is apparently working late, as he often does when he's excited about a new project. The familiar sounds of scientific experimentation provide comfort to Marty, reminding him that even in 1955, Doc Brown is the same brilliant, dedicated scientist he's always known. Marty hesitates before knocking on the laboratory door. This version of Doc Brown doesn't know him yet. Their first meeting won't happen until past. Marty arrives in 1955 during the events that are probably happening right now elsewhere in town. Explaining the situation without causing paradoxes will require careful thought and precise language. When Past Doc opens the laboratory door, his reaction to seeing Marty is one of complete shock and disbelief. This version of Doc has wild, unkempt hair and wears a lab coat covered with chemical stains and burn marks from various experiments. His eyes are bright with the manic energy of someone who rarely sleeps and never stops thinking. Marty carefully explains that he's a time traveler from 1985, and that he needs Doc's help to rescue the future version of Doc Brown from 1885. The explanation sounds incredible even to Marty as he says it, but he has the telegram as proof and a detailed knowledge of Doc's personality and work that gradually convinces the skeptical scientist. Past Doc examines the telegram carefully, studying the handwriting, the paper, and the postmark, with the thoroughness of someone trained to analyze evidence. His scientific mind rebels against accepting such an impossible claim, but the evidence is too compelling to dismiss. The telegram is clearly authentic, and Marty knows details about Doc's life and work that no stranger could possibly possess. The most convincing proof comes when Marty describes the time machine itself. Past Doc has been working on temporal displacement theory for years, but he hasn't yet figured out how to make it practical. When Marty describes the flux capacitor and explains how it makes time travel possible, Past Doc realizes that his future self has solved the problems that currently baffle him. Past Doc's reaction to learning about time travel is exactly what Marty expected. Pure scientific excitement mixed with a healthy dose of concern about the implications. His first questions are technical. How does the time machine work? What power source does it use? And what are the theoretical limits of temporal displacement? As Marty answers these questions to the best of his ability, Past Doc begins pacing around his laboratory with increasing enthusiasm. The confirmation that time travel is possible validates decades of theoretical work and opens up possibilities he's only dreamed about. At the same time, he's deeply concerned about his future self's predicament. The laboratory around them reflects Doc's lifelong passion for scientific discovery. Workbenches are covered with half-finished inventions, chalkboards are filled with complex equations, and electrical equipment hums and sparks in various corners. The organized chaos of the space provides a perfect backdrop for their extraordinary conversation. Past Doc immediately begins planning how to rescue both Marty and future Doc from their respective situations. His approach is methodical and scientific, breaking down the problem into manageable components and working through each challenge systematically. Despite the urgency of the situation, he maintains the calm, logical thinking that characterizes all his work. According to the telegram, Doc has hidden the DeLorean somewhere in 1885, where it will remain undisturbed for 70 years. Past Doc realizes that if they can locate the hidden time machine, they might be able to repair and refuel it, allowing Marty to travel back to 1885 and rescue future Doc. The plan requires careful research and preparation. They need to find historical records that will tell them where the DeLorean is hidden, determine what repairs will be necessary after 70 years of storage, and figure out how to obtain the materials needed for those repairs using 1955 technology. Past Doc approaches this challenge with the same enthusiasm he brings to all his scientific projects. He pulls out maps, historical documents, and reference books, spreading them across his workbench as he begins researching the problem. His movements are quick and precise, driven by the excitement of solving a puzzle that combines his love of science with his concern for his future self. The laboratory fills with the rustle of turning pages and the scratch of pencil on paper as Past Doc takes notes and makes calculations. The steady rhythm of research and analysis creates a calm, productive atmosphere that helps settle Marty's nerves after the dramatic events of the evening. After several hours of research, Past Doc discovers a reference to an unusual burial in Hill Valley's historical records. In 1885, a man named Dr. Emmett Brown requested that a large, unusual object be buried in a specific location, with instructions that it not be disturbed for exactly 70 years. The timing and location match the information in the telegram perfectly. The burial site is in what will eventually become Hill Valley's Delgado Mine, an area that's currently undeveloped but easily accessible. Past Doc calculates that if they can reach the site and excavate the DeLorean without attracting attention, they should be able to begin the restoration process immediately. The excitement of discovery energizes both men, but Past Doc cautions that the excavation will need to be done carefully. After 70 years underground, the DeLorean may have suffered damage from moisture, corrosion, or settling earth. They'll need to assess its condition before they can determine what repairs will be necessary. Past Doc begins making a list of equipment they'll need for the excavation: shovels, ropes, pulleys, and possibly some kind of lifting mechanism to extract the car from its underground hiding place. The list grows longer as he considers all the potential challenges they might encounter during the recovery operation. The next morning, Past Doc and Marty gather the necessary equipment and travel to the Delgado mine site. The location is remote and quiet, surrounded by hills and valleys that will one day be developed into residential neighborhoods. The peaceful morning air carries the scents of sage and wildflowers, creating a serene atmosphere for their unusual archaeological expedition. Past Doc has brought surveying equipment to help locate the exact burial spot, using the coordinates provided in future Doc's telegram. The precision of the measurements suggests that future Doc planned this hiding place very carefully, choosing a location that would remain undisturbed while still being accessible when the time came for recovery. As they begin the excavation, Past Doc explains his theories about temporal mechanics and the implications of their current situation. His enthusiasm for the scientific aspects of time travel helps keep their spirits up during the physical labor of digging, and his knowledge provides valuable insights into the challenges they'll face. The work proceeds slowly but steadily. The earth is dry and compact, making digging difficult, but the remote location ensures they won't be interrupted by curious onlookers. The story pauses here, with past Doc fully committed to the success of time travel, and Marty on his way to rescue future Doc from the Old West. Everything has led to this moment. The journey to 2015, the discovery of the alternate timeline, the recovery of the sports almanac, and the preparation of the DeLorean for its final mission. But the adventure is far from over. In 1885, new challenges await that will test everything Marty has learned about courage, friendship, and the importance of making the right choices when faced with impossible situations. The peaceful conclusion of their mission in 1955 is just the calm before another storm of adventure in the American frontier. The gentle morning light streaming through the laboratory windows suggests hope and possibility, while the empty space where the DeLorean stood reminds us that some journeys must be taken alone, armed only with determination and the knowledge that friends are worth any sacrifice necessary to save them. And so our story ends where it began, with the promise of adventure, the power of friendship, and the eternal hope that no matter how complex the problems we face, there's always a solution for those brave enough and clever enough to find it. The DeLorean may be gone, but the spirit of discovery and the bond between Doc and Marty continue to drive the story forward into whatever challenges the Old West may hold. The clock tower in Hill Valley's town square continues to tick steadily, marking the passage of time in the normal world, while in another time entirely, the real adventure is just beginning. The peaceful resolution of their 1955 mission provides the foundation for whatever trials await in 1885, and the knowledge that past Doc now believes in the possibility of time travel ensures that no matter what happens, the future holds infinite possibilities. The end. If you are still awake, try our other movie story videos. Subscribe if you liked the video. Thanks.